Some of you may have heard me share before that I have no problem relating to especially primary class, Linda, since you're working with that, because I remember my last Sunday school primary class. And I remember going there and telling my teacher, I'm not going to be back next week. Well, it was summertime. The teacher says, well, we'll see you after vacation. No, it's not going to come back after vacation. And I was in transition with my family to the Adventist church. And, well, where are you going to go to church? I couldn't remember that long name. It didn't make any sense to me at that time. And so I remember then my first Sabbath school primary class. So, as I have visited over the years to all different kinds of classes, but especially those in children's ministries, it's with a little different eye that I remember that first time and now how I relate to it. There's one particular primary class that I wish I could take you to. I wish we could just go there and visit. Come with me in your mind's eye, if you will, as we enter the church door and we go just a little ways down the hallway. And as you go into the primary class, there's a face there, happy face. Happy face of the leader greeting you as a primary. And doesn't say, just go over there and sit down, but actually takes you, tries to place you next to someone that they feel that you will want to sit with. Or if it's a child that's there every week, probably places you where you need to be. You understand. And there's strategic seating, if you haven't already learned that. And but before that child sits down, invariably that child will hug the teacher. And we know there's a place for hugging. We know there's a place not for that and all too. But then there's the other leader in the primary department. And the other leader is there looking and waiting and anxiously getting ready for those children to come because they have prepared. They're ready. They're confident that it's going to go well because they've asked the Lord to do so. Now, let's think just for a minute. This class is well decorated. You will notice that. Has many items, more than a lot of Sabbath school classes have. Now, I need to ask you a question. Why do you think that might be? Say again?
Someone put them there.
Someone put them there, okay. And you're on the right track, and I want to lead us a little bit further. Somebody sponsored it, okay. So for us to have materials, it takes someone to be able to sponsor it. Now, unique to this particular class that I'm talking about at this particular location, there's not a budget from the church. So you know who's sponsoring this? The two leaders. Willingly doing so, wanting to do so, not doing it grudgingly. It's very evident, that they're wanting to be a part of this and that they're wanting to get involved. But now, just for a few moments, tell me, what's the good part about that? You have a Sabbath school class that's operating very dynamically, but without a budget.
Committed leaders.
Yeah. Okay. Committed leaders. What else?
Seems like they might have the full range of what's the word? Influence.
Mm-hmm.
They can control what's in and out of the class.
Okay, all right. So there's some good things about it. What's a possible downside to the leaders sponsoring this class financially?
They'll get burned out, probably get tired of it after a while, but it also keeps other people from doing it.
Two very good points. Number one, when they're not there, maybe it's not going to go. Maybe the next person just can't. Maybe their heart's willing, but their pocketbook doesn't follow, in terms of being able to, okay? So that's really not what we need to be doing. It's really not fair to others to not have the chance to participate with them when we really think of it. So we're talking about boards and budgets and making them work for you as a leader. Well, let's first of all say, why is it that we want to visit with our boards, our churches, our individuals? What's the real driving reason? Now, we could think of many good reasons, and all of those would be good. Let me submit there's one that I want us to at least think of right now. I'm going to ask you a question now. And however your answer is fine. When did you accept Jesus as your personal Savior? Do you remember that time? Maybe it's just you always have thought that way and you never thought of a specific point in time. But was there a point in time when you accepted Jesus as your personal Savior? Care to share?
It was a evangelistic crusade when they used to have them under a tent.
Yes, I remember those.
Yes, and I was 12, and
You were 12.
I was touched by what the pastor, and he gave the altar call, and I came forward.
12 and an evangelistic series, others.
I was an adult when I truly accepted the Lord.
Sure.
At the age of around 12, I had gone through the motions. But
Okay.
As an adult,
You began to understand and
I was almost 30 years old.
sure.
And
Sure.
I actually was over 30.
Which is pretty early for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I had decided to go to church. My husband and I never really discussed religion
Yeah.
until I said, I want to go to church.
But then it all fit together, didn't
And
it?
he said, I only go to Seventh-day Adventist church. I said, what's that?
Yeah.
But when I started the Bible study, it all fell into
It all
place
fell together.
all those years. And then the Holy Spirit sat on me.
Yep. Made it all come
He
together.
sat on my chest and made me say yes.
There you go. When was yours, Linda?
8. I was 8 years old.
8. Okay. And I'm moving this along. I don't want to cut you off, but I understand. 15. 12. Okay.
I was grown, I was
You were grown.
I wasn't raised in a church at all.
Understand. And these are good timings.
6.
Yeah. 6. Sometimes that's thought to be pretty young, isn't it? Okay. You know what the statistics are now. You've been hearing those. When is it that if we get an opportunity to accept Jesus, we're more likely to do it? Now, there's exceptions, and aren't we thankful there are? Okay. But maybe you were even building on that earlier decision. Yeah. And sometimes people might say, well, maybe 6 is too young. We always want a child to accept Jesus, okay? And maybe we'll be careful about saying, oh, you're too young. No, we'll say, oh, I'm so glad for your decision. Let's look forward to your baptism, which even could be a few years off. So you see my point. And again, we could tell each our story. But why do we want to make sure that children's ministries, whatever area it is that you're working in, is budgeted? Because we want to catch those young people as soon as we can, and then they have a lifetime of service for Jesus. Let's look at our presentation here. I'm not real sure how you feel about this, but when we really think of it, God's resources are unlimited, aren't they? They're limitless, okay? They're unlimited. But God chooses to work through humans, doesn't He? Now tell me, what are the programs? I'm not asking for specific ones right now, okay? Because I want to keep on with our presentation here. But what are the programs that you give your money to? It's where your heart is, number one, isn't it? It's where you probably see something that's going strong. You're probably not going to give to something that's at a dead end. Now, there are times when we say, hey, this one needs to be lifted up, but you're probably going to give where you think it's going to go, okay? It's going to succeed. And so let's look at some of the benefits of the budget process. Look at our first one. You will get what is needed for the ministry when you learn some simple strategies. Oh, and by the way, remind me, who will remind me to tell the story of Martha before we finish? It'll be the last story. Someone remember to remind me to tell the story of Martha, because I think it's going to illustrate, the story of Martha is going to illustrate what we're talking about. All right, so the benefit of doing a budget is, of course, getting what is needed for the ministry. The budget process can make you a key partner with other decision makers in the church, okay? It brings you together. It brings some unity. The next one it will help you participate, and your participation will create a visibility and a priority for your ministry. Let me pause and go back to my pastoral experience for a few moments. And I remember a couple who always came to church board. There was just no question. Now, sometimes I had to tell them, you know, maybe because you've been feeling so badly, maybe you didn't need to come. That's a little unusual for a pastor to tell someone that, isn't it? But always they had very calculated, just a minute or two, never over 3 minutes, a little story to tell about Pathfinder ministry. But they were at every board meeting, not just when they needed money, okay? Not just when they needed money. And I want to be careful how I'm saying this, unlike some others who showed up and, well, tonight I'm here to ask for money, you know. This was not a very prosperous church, but I can assure you that there was money found for Pathfinder ministry in that church because it became a priority, because it was a priority in the leaders' minds, and they made it a priority in the minds of that church board, in that church, in those parents. It was even a priority in the minds of the young people, and it showed. So let's look at some budget strategies. First of all, you could just say, we won't have any budget at all, and we're not putting this down. Don't mistake that we're just waiting for the Lord to move. That's a strategy, okay? That's a strategy. And you know, in life it would be well sometimes if we would just wait and let the Lord move before we get ahead of Him, okay? So, be careful with that one. We're not putting it down. Let's look at the next one. How about end of the year budget? Says it reflects actual expenditures from last year. Well, let's go back to our first story. If you're going to look at the one I just told you about where the leaders gave all of the money, well, it's going to end up with zero. And we're going to say, oh, good, we don't need any more for next year. Well, okay. That's not the way we really want to go. Let's wait to the end of the year for the stewardship campaign to kick in, if indeed your church has one. Some churches don't always have some. Let's look at more strategies. Budgets can be developed 1 year at a time. And many go on that. But I'm wondering if there might be a better way. Budget committees can ask you for a dollar figure. How much do you need to operate your VBS, your Sabbath school class? And you might say, well, I'm new at it. I'm not real sure. And that's why at conventions like this, sometimes people want some ideas of how much to plan for budgets. Another one could be a budget committee says you're only going to get so much of the increase that comes in this year. Now remember another experience as being Pathfinder director for the conference. One particular Pathfinder director came to me and said, my, we're just really hurting. We really are. Our church budget is so low, and they're going to give us, I forget what the percentage was, and we're just not going to be able to do anything this year. And I felt for them. Tried to share with them some of these kind of concepts that would hopefully help them. So, all of these that we've been looking at are strategies for making budgets, but we're not just going to concentrate now on the problems, but let's just briefly touch on those so that we can understand that maybe there's a better way. These methods can cripple the church, its church's advancement in ministry if we're not careful. It puts us in a reactive mode rather than a proactive mode. And it sort of frames the ministry in a little box, doesn't it? But budgets really should reflect our priorities rather than dictate them. So, again, Why do we need a budget for children's ministries? Because we shared earlier, usually at a very young age, if they accept Jesus, they have a better chance of doing that until you wait till much further in life. So, as children's ministries leaders, we see the importance, don't we? So we need to encourage others to see that importance and help them to do that. You know, children will come where there is a program that is interesting, where there is a program that's exciting, where there's a program that has some solidness to it. If they see that it's worth grabbing onto, they will want to come, and most likely their parents will come too. And many children's ministries are how families come into the church. So let's look at a better way of strategic planning. And I want you to hit it twice this time, Janice, because I'm going to go down to the second one. The second one in here, it all begins with what? Seeking God's will. Remember earlier, we were saying we don't want to get ahead of God. We want to follow Him. We want to seek His will. But there are these others also. Key ministry priorities are identified. Okay, we want to be able to reach our young people as quickly as we can. We want to give them the opportunity of knowing Jesus as early in life as they can. So we want to have a sense of urgency about this. Now, some churches, I don't know about yours, are now going to, instead of just electing a leader 1 year at a time, maybe 2, maybe 3. And this gives a chance really to build over the years. And that's a good way to do it. This is the way to avoid creating budgets from scratch every year, if you're able to stay with the program. So if your church were to do that, don't be too scared about committing for more than 1 year. There can really be some advantages for you as a leader and for your ministry. Let's look at some more benefits of strategic planning. Budgeting is projected forward to reflect a purpose-driven mission. Again, we want to reach those young people as soon as we can. Now, sometimes we may be in a situation where our church is not real sure about their mission, not real sure where they're going. Maybe they're just coming together a week at a time. This is where you could actually help your church be mission-driven, okay? I say this carefully again, but there was a church that was just 13 years old, relatively young church. I don't know what your guess might have been as to what number of pastor they had, but they were now on the 6th pastor of a 13-year-old church. And so this church was sort of just living a year at a time or 2 years at a time, waiting to see who the new pastor was, and virtually starting all over again. Finally, they were able to go beyond that little sequence and to get into longer-term planning, longer-term goals, and a lot of that was driven by their Pathfinder leaders who had goals, and they kept them, and they stayed in Pathfinder leadership for a number of years. That was a big change for that church. Another thing that we can see as a benefit of it, you see your next year needs are identified before the fundraiser comes or before the stewardship plan kicks in. And then the last on this particular one is that people will give freely in response to something they see as growing. They have a target. So again, as we went in the very beginning, who gives? What do people give to? People want to give to something that they see that is working, that is succeeding, and will continue to be a ministry. All right, all of this begins now with key leaders, such as yourself. And I hope you really do see that you are a key leader in this. I hope you see that your department, or whatever ministry it is that you're working with, is really, really important. And without it, there would be a hole in the ministry of your church or in the ministry to your community. I hope it is just that important to you. A lot begins with the attitude of the whole church, of course. And again, if that's not where it needs to be, you can be a part in bringing it back together. Let's go visit in our mind's eye a church. Now, I want to say something before I have us enter that church. Our mindset before we go in that church is going to make a lot of difference, okay? Now, if I go in that church, I don't think anybody's going to ever be happy here, or I don't think anybody's going to greet me here, and I'm not going to say anything to anybody, and I'm just going in with my head down. If somebody says hi to me, fine. If they don't, I'm going to be unhappy with this church. Now, does anybody go in like that? Maybe not, but maybe so. I hope to go to church today, and I pray that the Lord will give me a good experience, that I will learn something, that I will be helped, but also that I could help someone else. Now, both of those individuals could probably go in the same church and probably would have a different experience when you understand what I'm saying. But how important it is that we do have someone that does greet our people at the door. Helps them to find a Sabbath school class. Going back to our first experience of the primary leader, taking the child and saying, maybe you would like to sit here. Now, sometimes that doesn't work, as we know. And we don't take an adult and say, sit here, and yet we show them to a class. We get a little better acquainted with them. Where do they fit? What might be a possibility? And you know, if this one is not a class, you're coming new here, and if this is, I'm talking about adults now, if this is not a class that fits you, you know, we have these several other classes. In fact, maybe you already have all of those classes written out, the various classes that you have in your church for adults. Most certainly, we would want to take the children to their divisions, walk with the family with them, wouldn't we? Now, not always does that happen, does it? But if it can, if your church really knows its mission, then others will get a bigger picture and they'll learn what your ministry is all about. And most of all, and I shouldn't say most of all, but last of all in this particular section, you're going to be planting seeds. Seeds for the future of the ministry that you're working with, but also for the future of your church. Sometimes children's ministries people fail to see the real potential that they have in leadership of a church. Key people in the leadership and the ongoing of a church ministry. All right, well, we've been looking at some things. Let's evaluate some of the strengths and identify some of the challenges that come with ministry such as this. How do we really try to get others involved? Sometimes we try to do it all by ourselves, but if we can get together with others and pray together, help them assess how we're doing, it gives opportunity for growth. Now, that's not always easy to do. I don't know that I want somebody to come in and tell me I've done it wrong, do you? And yet at the same time, if we can build a setting, and by the way, if we've been building a team all along, a team that we trust, a team that we can give responsibility to, then we can visit together in a setting that will be for growth. Now, always we need to make sure that we're getting specific facts. sometimes taking attendance at church or Sabbath school or whatever is misunderstood. Well, they're just worried about numbers, and if we don't have the numbers, they're going to be unhappy. Well, no. It doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes it is that way, and I'm sorry when it is. But we can track our growth, or we can track maybe we're not where we need to be. But I think most of all, we want to see what our potential is. Do you remember that family that came to Vacation Bible School who is now attending the Sabbath school? And by the way, that's another key item that we're not even talking about here today, but I hope that we realize that as children's ministries leader, it's a continuum throughout the year of children's ministry. Sabbath school every week. Church should be children-oriented. Okay, so the children feel a part of it. That's another whole subject, isn't it? And it fits hand in hand when Vacation Bible School comes along. Many times we see Vacation Bible School just as a week or 2 weeks, and that's all it is. No, it's a part of the continuum. VBS can lead to people coming to Sabbath school. Evangelistic meetings can lead to people coming to Sabbath school, to coming to Vacation Bible School, and so forth. It's a part of the continuum that keeps on going. So, there are families maybe who came to the evangelistic meetings. They're trying to come to Sabbath school. They're trying to fit into this new day of worship. They're trying to fit into this new congregation. Remember, I told you I was a primary when I was introduced to a new church, and I didn't want to go because I lost all of my friends. I was so thankful there were those who tried to assimilate me into the church, not just my family, but church people. And I'll pause one more time to say how blessed I was. I don't know what your junior boys do during foot washing, but I tell you what, the church I went to, even though it's been quite a number of years back, before it was accepted to have a child come and participate in foot washing and communion, I was asked to come and participate by the men of the church. I was asked to operate the PA system, and I think back now, oh, what a horrible thing that probably was, because I knew nothing about it. But they trusted me. They wanted me to feel involved. They wanted it to be my church. And so as we have the young people that are coming to various events of children's ministries, as they continue to come, then they're a part of the continuum, and it continues to help. So let's do a little dreaming. I told you I would be making a presentation, and then I need to know what time it is. Help me out with that. And let's do a little brainstorming. Okay, good. So we've got 30 more minutes, don't we? Okay, all right. I want to make sure I give you time to speak, and we want to take time to come back to actually working on some work, okay? What's going through your mind so far? Possibilities, problems, challenges? I just want to do a little brainstorming. Let's go to the next one here when you get a chance. Talk to me.
Part of what I'm thinking about is, now that we're finally in our new building, putting these things into action.
Oh,
Because
good.
up until
Good
now,
time.
We haven't really, that I know of, we haven't really had that kind of continuation of information.
Okay, so you've got a new start at your church, so to speak.
Yes.
This is a good time, hopefully, to get a number of things going. May I brainstorm with you just a little bit on this? Find 1, 2, or 3 things that you want to do instead of the 20 that you want to do, okay? You understand what I'm saying. We come back from a meeting like this, and I've always said, if I can come back with 3 good things that I can take back and work with, I'll do better than if I try to come back and flounder with 20, okay? You understand my point. So good, Karen. What else is going through your mind as we've talked here this morning, as we've thought about this? Possibilities? Challenges?
First, I was remembering a school I was part of where the principal each year just wrote a check for whatever money they needed. His son was wealthy, and he would call his son and say, "We need $100,000." There it was. And when he left, the school was in big trouble. So illustrating your point.
Illustrating it very well. Yeah, there are those who have money, who give, but when that's no longer an opportunity, then our mission is challenged, isn't it? Okay?
I know it's very important to have a paper trail, especially something like Vacation Bible School. There's a lot of people who say, well, I'll just donate the coloring books, or I'll, you know. But what about next year? If we know how much those coloring books cost, you can donate the money later,
Mm-hmm.
but let us have a paper trail so that we can keep an accurate amount
Of what it cost us.
expenditures, yeah.
Very good, Karen, to know how much it did cost us, okay? Now that can be frightening to some people. Now, oh, it cost us that much. But we need the realities of it. So very good, okay, all right? Ministry does cost, but we need to know. We need to understand. Okay? Maybe there's some more thoughts that it'll still come to you, and we're going to come to our worksheets in just a few moments. Before we do, though, don't assume that the traditional income source is the only way to budget. Thinking about members today, especially as younger people take over, if I may say it that way, they want choices. And there are those who are ready to give the second mile giving, even much more so than older generations or earlier generations. And that doesn't hardly seem the way it is sometimes, but I believe it can be if we give them the opportunity, if they take ownership. All right, let's look for next now, how we're going to present something. And we're just going to go over this rather quickly, but then I'll come to the other one where you'll actually get a chance to build a budget. But let's take now what we've been learning and try to come up with a concept proposal, a cover letter. Can you tell, would you be able to tell church board, churches, individuals, what it is, the dream in your mind? What's the dream in your mind for what you do? Could you put that in, by the way, no more than 3 paragraphs? If you go a page and a half or 2 or 3, I'm probably not going to read it. Make it very succinct. Could you make a statement of, I don't know, this is the wording I really want to use, what the problem is, what the need is, maybe. Although, you really have to say there is a problem before you can say what the, you know, it sort of goes hand in hand. Yeah, that's it. Okay, good, Dave. Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, don't misunderstand when we say what is the problem. Yeah, what is the need? What do we need to do? Okay, now, if there is a need, there is a problem. Now we want to solve it next. What's your goal and objective? Have you come to the place in your mind where you could say that? And if you're not right now, that's okay, but be thinking in that direction. That's why we're thinking this way. And then what is going to be your approach to achieving the goals and objectives that you're outlining? And then you want to summarize it. You want to say, in one sentence, what you've been trying to say in the whole proposal, okay? That takes a lot of work, doesn't it? It may take calling on someone else that has more skills in that than you do, but what are you doing when you call on someone else? You're complimenting them, aren't they? You have confidence in them. You want them to be a part of your team. You don't have to work alone. You don't have to do something that you're not good about doing. Okay? That's a part of the team approach. This really does and doesn't illustrate this, but it's a story. We were on a mission challenge trip for Pathfinders here in our conference. We'd gone up to Canada, and a lot of people say, why'd you go to Canada? They don't need any help. If you go to the Maritimes, 3 of the province there, at this particular time they only had 5 clubs, and they had asked for us to come up and encourage them in Pathfinder. Encourage them to be able to do something. We went up, did a work project, and did a vacation Bible school also, and it gave young people a chance to feel they were involved in their church, and they were happy. And to illustrate this, there was one young man that was, I'll just put it this way, he was a little difficult to work with sometimes. And yet you knew he had a good heart. And it showed one evening, about the second time of VBS, that the children were doing an activity. And this Pathfinder noticed that as this one little child got on the chair, and you know how children do, they look, they like to go look backwards in a church. He noticed that the soles of the two shoes of this child had holes in them, down to the stocking. He came back, and I had never seen this child so animated for something good as he was. There was a problem, there was a problem, there was a problem. And nobody else had picked up on this. I said, what was the problem? Did you see that little girl with the holes in her shoes? I said, no, I missed that. Tell me more. And he described in detail what had happened. Now, we have to be careful in what we do, but if you know who you're working with, you know some approaches that you can take. And I said, and what are you going to do about it? Now, that sounded ugly, I know, to some people, but I knew with him, if he had a challenge, he'd go with it. He says, you know, I don't know, but I'm going to do something before tomorrow night. I said, let's go for it. And he sat there for a minute, and I said, got anybody to help you with this? He says, yeah, I want all the team to help me with it. And he took over. I mean, he just took over. He says, how can we help this child? And they started discussing, and they were working together and everything. And they said, you know, we all brought some spending money. And before long, they each had thought they could at least spare $1 of their spending money. And they were going to buy that little girl a pair of shoes. Well, we have to be careful about our roles sometimes, but we have to take our roles. I said, what if that child feels uneasy about us giving her a pair of shoes? Oh, hadn't thought about that. Oh, I've got a plan. He was just Johnny on the spot for everything. He says, I need another $1 from everybody, and we're going to buy everybody a pair of socks. I said, man, that's nice. So everybody gets a prize, do they? Yeah. Well, how are you going to get the right prize to the right person, you know? Well, and I'll have to admit at this point, they came up with a plan to rig the giving. And I wasn't too worried about it for this occasion. I hope that was not wrong. But they had a plan where they would give socks to every child, and there would be a grand prize of a pair of shoes. And guess who it would go to? Do you have a plan that the Lord will inspire you to do for your needs of your church?
He said something in there that I think could serve us well in gathering this and putting together our plans and gathering ideas and in talking to the board. When he came to me and said, there's a problem with shoes, I said, no, I missed that. Tell me more. So many times we may go to the board and say, we need $100 for what? Well, there's this thing we want to go to, or this conference, or whatever it is. And they missed the problem. We need to tell them more. We need to educate them. And when they have an issue, if they see something in our area and say, hey, I don't like what you're doing there, oh, tell me more. If they have a problem with what we're doing, that's part of that dialogue that can happen. And I think that the phrasing you used there can be really helpful.
Thank you, David. So important. Yeah. To not go without listening, to not give without listening, but to have dialogue both ways. Part of the teamwork approach, isn't it? Part of the teamwork approach. Let's talk about board presentations. Let's celebrate what is working. Okay? Now, I'm not going to ask you right now. Okay, thank you. I'm not going to ask you right now, and because I got my timer here telling me I need to move along, and that's what I wanted her to do. But I want you to have a story. You see, I've told several stories. Okay, I want you to have a story. Well, I don't have one. watch for one, pray for one that you can use. More than likely you have a story. Maybe you just haven't thought of this as being the story that I need to know, give. I'm going to move us along a little bit faster here so we'll have time to do our other things. Describe the partnerships and the shared benefits of working together as a team. Next one, demonstrate consensus. That's what we were just talking about here. Don't go to your board, you know, I'm so-and-so, and you're going to come up with this kind of money. There's not entitlements. Or the department that I operate is the only important one in this church. Oh, will you ever get in trouble with that wording? It's important, and you better think it's important, and you better make sure other people know it's important, but you better also know that theirs is a part of the picture. The body, the illustration that God gave in the Bible, has to depend on all of its parts. And I'm going to say this carefully, but you can be the mouth part, but if you don't have the rest of it to carry it there, it's not going to work, is it? Illustrating that. So we need to, yes, demonstrate consensus rather than entitlement, but use compelling, again, statistics for what you need, and then show appreciation as they do come in partnership with you. A part of this also is our next part, building trust.
Excuse me.
Did I get ahead of you?
Well,
Mhm.
I just want to back up a moment. 'cause
Let's go
you
back. You can go back. Yes.
usually left in there,
Mm-hmm.
the second part of the next left, and ask for what you need. I've been on so many boards that we say, well, is that budget working? Well, they haven't said they need anything else. And we'll talk to them, well, boy, if we had more money. Ask, you have not, why?
Because you didn't ask. Ask, put it to good use, give a report about it. Make sure that it's a workable thing. Very, very important. Yeah, really, really is. All right, and a part of building trust then is document what has happened in your ministry. Evaluate it. Make changes when needed. Coming back to the people that I told you about earlier that always came to the church board and made reports, make quarterly reports. By the way, doesn't hurt if they could be printed. Many times a visual statistics will go further than just wording. Celebrate ministry to the kids and to the entire congregation. Used to be we had 13 Sabbaths. There are still places that have that where the children come forward and show what's happening, okay? If that's not one that works in your church, find a way that does. How about children's and family Sabbaths? Build trust with those about you, the stockholders. You see all of the various ones. And then give back what is not used. That's a concept sometimes we don't think about. So, I want to leave that on the board here for a moment. Let me tell you about Martha. Martha was a person who saw needs in others. In fact, she lived not too far from here, and she realized when she was alive, which is a number of years back, and you'll understand as I tell the story, that there were a lot of rural children in this area that did not have a chance to learn how to do basic things in life, let alone schooling. And so Martha Berry of the Berry College over in Rome. Martha says, I'm going to bring, and she started in just a small little schoolhouse. She brought the community children in, and she taught the girls how to do things that girls needed to learn how to do, just exist. Taught the fellows how to do things to just exist. But then she had education brought in with the practical things. Her program was growing beyond the means that she had, and she didn't know what to do. And one particular time, after the program had grown for a while, she went to see someone and she said, I need your help. She had her statistics. She'd had everything all ready. But the person turned her down. You'll be turned down sometime. But what do? Well, story wasn't completely accurate when I said she was turned down because she was given $1 for her program. Martha took that. And she was very happy that she was not entirely turned down, as she saw it. And we'll go ahead to the next. You see, Martha knew that she was called to minister to these young people. So when Martha Berry of now Berry College went to Henry Ford and asked for money, and he only gave her $1, do you know what Martha did? She visited Henry Ford 1 year later with statistics saying, Mr. Ford, here's what your $1 did this year at Berry School. And today, if you were to go to Rome, Georgia, you would see a particular part of the campus with a lot of buildings, with a whole campus all in itself, made possible by the gift of Henry Ford. Do you feel you're called? Do you feel that calling to go back to your board now? Might not be easy. Might only get $1, but you better show what that $1 did. The story of Martha Berry of Berry College. All right, Janice is going to give you a couple of things. Going to give you a worksheet, and give me some timing here again. We've got 8 minutes? 10 minutes, okay, good. I want you to just turn immediately to the third, well, actually it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to be the ministry goals worksheet. Now, I would really wish that you not write on this, okay? Because I only have the one copy for you. I should have brought more than one, and next time I'll remind myself to do that. But I want us to look at that and the next page. Now, by the way, these materials were supplied to me from a particular source that you could get them from anywhere, but these were supplied to me, and I thought these were very good. But you can get them from various places. But look at the ministry goals worksheet. On the back of your one that you took notes on, you can take notes on it. The one that you've just been working on, you can work on the back of it. But I want you to leave this, and maybe you want to take it home and copy it, because you'll probably need more than one copy, okay? So that's what I would suggest. But let's just think, and I do want to get real quickly, how many are working in Sabbath school? We took some as we came in. Okay, how many are working in Vacation Bible School? All right, other departments, something else represented here? Maybe those two particular.
School superintendent overall.
Good, but very important, okay? And hopefully you can inspire those teachers. So I'm glad you are here. Yes, thank you for speaking up on that. I could leave some time for more interaction, but let me sort of go through this rather quickly. I want to also get to the next page, handout number 3 it's called. There are always decorations that are needed, that are age appropriate, okay, for the class that you're going to be teaching. Sometimes they make murals, and you say, well, can we spend money on a mural? Well, again, we don't want to get away from the budgeting process, but there's probably someone who will donate their time, and they can tell you how much, if they had charged your church, how much that was going to be. So you can put that down as a figure, you see. But they may, this Sabbath school that I was talking about, have beautiful murals, age appropriate and so forth. So maybe your number one, and I'm not telling you this is your number one, but maybe your number one would be like decorations, the overall, the general needs. You have seasonal needs of your classroom, okay? You can adapt this, of course, to Vacation Bible School. Maybe your second area of need would be lesson enhancements. What's your quarterly theme? You want things to tie to that, okay? have Moses in the basket. You'll want to have a basket with a with a baby in it. Now, maybe that's something you can borrow just for a week or a quarter. At the same time, there are going to be some things that are going to cost. By the way, this one particular Sabbath school that I'm thinking about had a boat that was built. And the materials could have been donated, and I think in this case they were, and yet at the same time, there was a cost, and it was placed, this is how much it would have cost us if we'd had to buy this. So you can still show what the church has saved by having these people help, okay? Maybe your number 3 might be the need for Sabbath school papers and quarterlies. I hope you have not had to be put into the situation where you have yay number of children attending and you have half as many Sabbath school papers. Or maybe you have just enough for your members and now there are visitors coming with saying, well, we don't have one for you, you know. That's not good. That's not building, is it? So that's 3. Maybe a 4th one might be just some basic supplies like craft supplies if you do a craft or other basic lesson supplies. First of all, yeah, Karen, you're getting into a new church. You might even need to talk about tables and chairs and writing boards. I don't know. So what is the need? And with Vacation Bible School, you have a theme this year. How are you going to give the lessons out and how are you going to do the various things? So I don't want to undercut that, but I just want to give you a broad stroke. So let me come now to handout number 3, and then we'll take the rest of the time to discuss anything. What if you're already into a budget cut? Or what if you've got this budget now finally that came to you and it come into a budget cut? I think it's good that we think about these kind of times too. You can see them here. Number 1, regroup. But bring your team in on this, okay? Those that are about you, working with you. Again, talk to all of the volunteers. We may get to the place where we have to, and we should anyway, recycle and reuse. We never want to just do away with things, but we might need to do more of that. Number 3, the hardest thing to do is to cut back. Maybe something that is not really necessary and to eliminate or to adjust. But we can always look for alternatives, can't we? Alternatives. Another way of doing the same way. And you don't have to do that alone. Bring your team about you to help you with that. You might need to be more heavily relying on some donations, okay? But again, document those donations and so that you can still keep track of what it's costing you. And then don't forget to still communicate to your team, which is your church leadership, your church membership, and you might even need to explain to the children sometime why there might be a difference in the program. But all of this can be a part of the training process, even for a young person to understand that funds are not unlimited. So I know I've sort of rushed us through a whole lot. It's been a lot to cover in an hour, and surely you have some questions and comments. But at least we were able to get some highlights, and just hopefully, most of all, that you were encouraged. If you were encouraged, then I think that that hopefully will help you to go back to face what it is that you are faced with.